I spent 40 days in the Arctic filming a documentary movie, but not only that. I also skied 700 kilometers across Spitsbergen while doing this whole filming, recording sound, charging all my equipment on a daily basis, and backing up my files every night in the tent. If this sounds like something you want to hear more about, then this is exactly for you, because I will talk about everything that was on my mind at that time, what I've learned in those 40 days, and I will go into detail on how I pulled this professional movie production off in a place that is not made for humans to survive at all.
One foot in front of the other, and then you do that for several days, and suddenly you have crossed the whole Svalbard.
Hey there, I'm Moritz, and if you're new here, I talk about my experiences of professional documentary movie production in remote places all over the world and want to teach you the skills and techniques to do the same. Now, this is the third video of a multi-part series about our trip to Svalbard in 2023, and although they're not really connected to each other, I recommend you watch the other parts as well for even more insights into a huge adventure documentary production. But now, let's get started. So, our idea to go to Svalbard and cross it in the first place was to create a high-quality documentary movie. That's why I put huge effort into the preparation of this trip, especially on the technical side. I spent months figuring out how to supply myself and the others with energy for 6 weeks while keeping this whole film production running. And long story short, I built my very own batteries for this matter and tested them quite extensively. If you're interested in seeing this whole process in detail and want to know how my complete technical preparation of this journey looked like, then let me know in the comments below. I think when you look at a project like this, it can feel very overwhelming, even frightening, and I was definitely frightened when we got driven out there with those snowmobiles. But on the days leading to this moment where we sat on the snow scooters, I took my time, filmed as much as I could during preparation, and therefore prepared myself for this task mentally. I remember that I sat there on the scooter and thought, I am ready for those 40 days ahead and ready for this challenge that I never had before in my life. And this is very important here, to prepare mentally and to allow your mind to calm down and get ready for what is ahead, because most of the pressure you put on yourself is just here. And now there's nothing left to do, except to start skiing. Alright, so we start skiing, and before us are 40 days of frozen wilderness and uncertainty about what we will experience. I had a little script handy with important moments I needed to film on this first day, and who could have foreseen this? I filmed exactly this one shot of us starting to ski, and then nothing, until we reached our first camp spot where I flew my drone for a few minutes, and that was it for the first day. I was completely overwhelmed by the fact that this was all new to me. I have never skied with these expedition skis before, nor have I skied while pulling a 60-kilogram sled behind me. So I needed to get some sort of daily routine going to pull this project off, and this was basically the first step I did on this trip. Think about efficient ways to film while skiing, having all my gear I needed that day organized, and then just grow into this new lifestyle with every new day. What I did, for example, from the second day on was to have my camera on me all the time, ready to film every second. Now, that's a still camera, but the form factor is kind of identical to the setup I used in the Arctic. Now, this already goes a bit into the technical side of this project, which deserves its very own video, and I want to focus on the mental challenges that come with a trip like this. But the key takeaway here is to make as much plans beforehand as you possibly can and be ready to throw them all overboard when you're finally in the situation. And if you're lucky and planned well, you might just need to adapt them here and there. The second thing I learned very quick is to get creative, and by that I mean this kind of creative. If your equipment gets cold or wet, or both, you don't have your warm bedroom or heater. You're in a tent somewhere on a giant glacier and the only source of heat is your stove. That's how I unfroze my camera, for example, when there was moisture inside, and one day it got so cold that it froze my shutter curtain while it was down. And the only way to keep on filming was with the stove, and trust me, I didn't know at all if this would help or instantly destroy my camera, but it was the only way out of the situation, and luckily it worked. Oh, and this is a bonus tip here. If you're treating your camera or any other technical device like a newborn, chances are that you won't get very far. And if you choose to work in these extreme environments, then go all in and put your equipment to the test, all within reason, of course. In my experience, this modern technology is built very well, and there hasn't been a snowstorm yet that destroyed my camera, even if I left it outside the tent until it was completely submerged in snow the next morning. Talking about the cold here, maybe you've seen this error in your drone's remote controller when the batteries are too cold and there's no way to get the drone in the air. Now, normally you wait until it gets warmer, but when you're 40 days in the Arctic, it just won't get warmer. So what did I do? You know, every morning we would boil snow to water and fill it into our bottles. So I took the bottle, put it into my isolating camp shoe together with the drone batteries, and voila, problem solved in a very low-tech approach. Did I think about this at home? Not at all, but the situation forced me to come up with something, and I accepted the fact that without the solution I won't have any of those essential drone shots. A big lesson I learned during that trip is to be comfortable, but not too comfortable. So what do I mean by that? Imagine yourself at home with a worst snowstorm happening outside. Now, you need to go outside for some reason, to fix something perhaps, or even just to bring your garbage to the bins in the driveway. Most likely you'll freeze to death in those 10 seconds of being out there. You'll probably get wet and can't see anything because wind and snow is all over your face. You hate every moment of this. Now, compared to having sturdy waterproof boots that reach up to your knee, waterproof pants, maybe 5 layers of clothing, a warm hat, and in the best case, snow goggles for clear vision. Like that, you can last hours out there without getting cold and fully concentrate on getting those epic snowstorm shots you imagined in your head. Now I said, be comfortable but not too comfortable. On this camp, for example, it was stormy, cold, and I already lay in bed. But after scouting the place with my drone while sitting inside the tent, I thought, oh, I need to go out there and get as many shots of this epic location as I can. So I crawled out of the sleeping bag and stood outside for 2 hours. It was late and cold, but it was totally worth it because we didn't have a camp as epic as this for the rest of the trip, and I got all my shots that night. So this connects really well to my next lesson I learned, and that is shoot a lot. It doesn't matter how cold it might be in the end or how exhausting that day was. You have to remember why you are there for. This is your job after all. And trust me, I had strong doubts all the time thinking, this is ridiculous and I can't possibly do this for 1.5 months straight. All this physical effort plus remembering to film everything that happened while also putting all the bits and pieces together in my mind to think about possible story structures and scenes I might have forgotten to film. So eventually I knew the only way to keep this production to a high level is to have my camera handy all the time and try and shoot everything that comes across my lens. Even if this means to stop the whole group for an hour just to get those reindeer shots, or extend lunch breaks to 3 hours just to get that one perfect FPV drone shot. After all, the whole reason for us to go there and ski for 40 days was to create this movie, and months before this trip we clearly communicated this to the whole team to make sure everyone is on the same page regarding the film. So if you find yourself in a similar situation like this, take the time you need because, in my experience, too little time is the biggest contributor to failure. Which brings me to the next point, time. On this trip we had a lot of time. We even planned 10 extra days only for filming since this traverse of Svalbard is traditionally done in about 30 days. So what I realized pretty quickly is where I would only rush from task to task on a normal shooting day at home and then come home in the evening trying to fit some data backup there and battery charging here while already planning out the next day, I didn't have this level of stress on this trip at all. If you've seen the film, then you've probably noticed that we had some rest days here and there where we didn't ski a meter and only sat in our tents or ice caves for the whole day. To me, that really felt like a day off, and I would take all my memory cards and back them up, charge all my batteries, and by the time all of this was done, it was 3 PM maybe, and I could fully relax or watch films. The thing is, you need to plan enough time for these demanding trips. There's nothing worse than to rush every day and hardly find the time to do basic tasks like data backup, and those days for me were one of the biggest factors to make this project as successful as it is. Oh, and by the way, those were also the days where I would spend a huge amount of time just writing things down in my notebook here. Things like, what did I shoot today, or what do I still need to shoot the next days, or whatever came to my mind in that second. I also wrote a diary covering the whole trip, and parts of this diary ended up being the inspiration of my narration in this film. So also a great way to capture thoughts on the go that will prove useful in the edit room. I know this is getting seriously long, but if you're still here, the next and last major lesson I learned on this journey will probably be very easy for you, and that's to go the extra mile. So after about 3 weeks of skiing and adapting my daily life to the harsh Arctic environment, I got a really good routine. My daily battery charging sessions got faster and faster, and I had filmed a lot until that point. But I knew I couldn't just relax and sit back just because I filmed hours of footage every day. On this evening, for example, day 25, all of the others went straight into the tents to get warm, but I needed a scene to explain the route. So I sat down with Herman for 45 minutes and let him explain the route while filming all different kinds of angles, even if there's only one shot in the final film. Right after that, I knew I hadn't filmed anything from the tripwire yet, so I stood another hour in the cold to film Mats Erik and Herman setting up the tripwire for polar bear defense. There's only a couple of seconds of it in the final movie, but totally worth it, and the only time I explain what we do to protect us against polar bears. There's another scene where Jonas is on polar bear watch while we are camping right next to the frozen fjord. Now, this was at 4 AM in the morning after I finished my 1.5 hours of polar bear watch. But instead of rushing back into the tent and sleep, I stayed up and joined Jonas to film his polar bear watch. What I want to say here is that if you don't put the effort in, chances are that no one will, and your project might not be as good as it could be. Now, I don't claim that I was the hero there, but on many days I went far behind my comfort zone, and looking back now, it was totally worth it. So this was a deep dive into my experience of 40 days of skiing in the Arctic while creating a documentary movie, which is available online, by the way, if you haven't seen it yet. You can find it on Apple TV, Prime Video, Sky, and some other platforms, and I'll link all the links down in the video description. And if you think I've missed something or there's something from this trip that you really want to know about, then leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer all of your questions. So thanks for staying until the end, and see you all next time. Cheers!